It's grout day. Wear something casual because you're going to get messy. This is the really fun part. We have let our coasters dry overnight. Woohoo! Okay, so both of our coasters are nice and dry. And now we're going to grout them. And what the grout does is it holds all the pieces of glass together and makes them stronger and water resistant. So the first thing we're going to do is go outside. You need to do this outside because this gets messy and dusty. Put plastic over your workspace. Then you've got to prepare your grout. All right, so for a ½ a cup of dry grout, you're going to put in about 3 tablespoons of water. You want the consistency, and you're going to like stir it up, blah, 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 like this. You want the consistency to be like peanut butter. In this case, I'm using an earth-colored grout. I like this idea because it won't compete with the colors of our glass, right? We want the glass to be the part that people look at, not the grout. So come on in, and I'm going to show you, we'll start with this one right here. I'm going to show you how to apply the grout. So we just take this wooden stick and our grout, and I'm just going to plop it right on. And it's like kind of like icing a cake, right? Just take that and get it into all the nooks and crannies. See that? This is a little bit wet. It could be a little drier than this. If the grout is super dry, then it's also kind of hard to spread. If it's too wet, then it takes forever to dry and it could crack. The little grout can crack. So you want it not too wet, not too dry. Again, kind of like peanut buttery consistency. So we're going to just spread it all over this thing. And guess what? You're going to go along the edges too. Get it all on the edges. Just let it get everywhere. Awesome. This is looking good, huh? And you just kind of poke it down, make sure it's pushed down in between all the nooks and crannies. Make sure you push it all in. And this grout is going to dry a little bit lighter than the color you see it right now when it's wet. When it dries, it'll be a little bit light earth color. And again, you can use any kind of grout in any color you want for your projects. In this case, I didn't want white because I didn't want it to compete with the center of our flower. And I didn't want black because I thought that would be too harsh for this project. This is kind of a pretty springy, summery looking project. Black would be pretty, a really pretty contrast. But for our case today, for our project today, we're just going to do this nice earth color. Let's see over here in the corner, got to get it on the corner. Now there's 2 different types of grout. There's sanded grout and non-sanded grout. One of the types of grout that you want to consider using is sanded grout. One is non-sanded grout, and they're for different widths of the area in between the tile or ceramic or glass that you're working with. See, this is looking real good. I'm kind of going around the edges. Again, you want to make sure that the grout's on all the edges and all the corners. You really want the grout all in there. And you'll see then in a couple minutes, the grout's going to start to get hardened. See, that's kind of like baking a cake. Get it in all the corners. You want to really make sure it's in all of the joints. And we've got plenty. We've got plenty of grout here. Okay, that's looking good. Right? Holy cow. All right, So when you're done with both of your coasters, you're going to step away for about 20 minutes. You're going to let this dry. You're going to let it harden. If it's too wet, it's going to take longer to dry. So if you get a really kind of wet consistency, you may need like 30 minutes, but keep coming back to check on it. And you don't want it to be completely dry, because then as you try to wipe the grout off the top of the coaster, you're not going to be able to get it all because it will already have kind of hardened over. So you want it to be semi-dry. So again, about 20 minutes. So we're going to come back and check this coaster in 20 minutes once we finish both of them. Okay, here we go, dry. Okay, it's been 20 minutes and Cupcake and I are checking on our coasters to see if they're ready to be wiped down to reveal our final design, and they're looking really good. So I think we're ready for this. Are we ready, Cupcake? Yes? Okay, let's go. Let's do this. So here we go. We've got my sponge, and here we have both coasters. So what I'm going to do first is just take my sponge, it's dry right now, and just kind of start to pull. Aha, see that? We're starting to reveal the beautiful design. Look how pretty that looks. And we're going to gently just pull the grout away from the design. Now we're going to take this and dip it in this water to just kind of rinse it out a little bit and get a lot of that grout off there. If you want to wear gloves while you do this, that's a good idea. You don't have to for a small project like this. For large projects, yes, you should definitely wear gloves. So we're just going to pull the grout off the top of the mosaic. Starting with the top of the mosaic first, rather than the sides. But I'll eventually get to the sides too. And you want to get as much moisture off the sponge as possible. You don't want this to get too wet. You just want enough moisture to just pull the grout off the top gently of your design. Also, if it gets too wet, it might pop some of the pieces of glass off. You can even see how I'm using the edges. I'm just trying to pull away all of that grout. And now we're starting to reveal the really pretty design underneath. See that? Oh my gosh, guys, it's so pretty. And you just keep pulling away and pulling away. And try not to add too much water. Really squeeze out the grout. And if it looks like it's still too wet and needs to dry some more, then walk away again for 10 minutes. So now it's looking like it's pretty wet under there, under that first layer that I just removed. So I'm going to walk away again. I'm going to give it another 10 minutes to dry now that I pulled off the very top part of the grout. So let's give it 10 minutes so this area can dry. Tick, 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 it's 10 minutes later. We're coming back and we're going to finish up these coasters. We're going to pull off more of the grout with our slightly damp sponge. See, we're getting a lot of it out. It's looking good. And we keep going back to rinse off our sponge and continue to wipe down this grout. Yay! See how it's come to life? Oh, this is looking really good, you guys. See how the colors are coming up? And again, you know, this takes a little bit of time and patience. I'm going to go around the edges now and start pulling some of the grout off the edges. Let's start with this one. See that? Just real soft. You don't want to pull too, you don't want to pull the whole thing off. You just want to smooth it out. Smooth the grout off the edges. This is a nice little sponge. It's small and it can be manipulated really easily for these new beginner projects. This is a perfect size. See that? Wow, that's looking good. Oh my gosh, this is so pretty. Look at that pretty yellow. And again, you don't want to push down too hard. You don't want to pull the grout from in between the pieces. You want to gently and slowly pull the grout away. Okay, let's do the edges on this one too. I like using the edge of this sponge to do that. Makes it nice and smooth. Wow, right? Oh, this is so pretty. Okay, it's coming along. Oh, you guys, how good does this look? Ah! See, this is the thing about mosaics. They're handmade, right? The pieces are always imperfect because you've hand cut them yourselves. You've made them by hand. And when you finish them, they're just such a beautiful piece of art, and you can be so proud of this. I mean, this is something you can actually use. Everybody uses coasters. You should be using a coaster. And it's just so pretty. Look at that. All right. So again, you don't want to pull too much off of the edges. And that's just about right. So what I'm going to do is let it dry again, a little bit more, and then come back for a final polish. But now at this point, the majority of the grout, 99% of the grout, is gone from the top. I mean to tell ya, pretty. Beautiful. You guys, we just made that. We just made that. Amazing. I can't wait to use these. Final step, we are done with our awesome coasters. Look at this, this is the last thing you do. They're all dried, so you just take an old rag, or you can use like an old, like a t-shirt. You could cut up some t-shirts and use a few of these as rags, and you just kind of polish them up and you dust them all off. And then you can take off the grout from the back, because you'll see you'll have like a little bit of grout back here. And you can just kind of wipe that stuff off. You know what I love to do is when I get done with my projects, even something as simple as a coaster, I will go, and when they're all dry, I will take paint, maybe some kind of really pretty contrasting paint, like a bright yellow in this case, and I might paint the back and the edges of it bright yellow. I want to sign my pieces, so you can take a Sharpie pen and sign your name and date the back of it. And if you are using these as coasters, then maybe you want to put a couple of pieces of felt at the bottom, like 4 of those little round pieces of felt on the back in every corner, especially if you're going to be using it on a tabletop that's really delicate. So this is the end of the project, but you can still do stuff to it if you want to continue crafting with this. Cupcake wants in the picture. As always, Cupcake's the star. But if you want to give it as a gift, yeah, paint the edges, sign the back of it. But aren't these beautiful? These turned out so well. I'm really proud of these. They're so easy to do. Each one of these took an hour to cut and to glue. Since you guys are just starting out, let's give it 2 hours. So let's say it took 2 hours. Then we let them dry overnight. And the next day, it took no more than an hour to grout them. And then you came back like 20 minutes later to make sure that it was dry, and you wiped a little bit more grout off. So give yourself like 2 hours on the second day. So altogether, 4 hours tops to make both of these coasters. And you guys are beginners. And see how beautiful they turned out? It's super easy. And now that you know the basics, you can come join me on a huge mosaic adventure. We can make all kinds of mosaics. I'll show you my tabletops, my big murals, my mosaic mermaid. She's really special. My kitchen bitches mosaics, they're kitchen backsplashes. I've done so many projects in mosaic and I want to show them all to you, but this is how you start. This is how I started, just with the basic shapes. There we go.